We're back here on our program, Jones and Company, and today we are pleased to have with us the Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, Godfrey.
Mr. Bermudez, Sir Hilary Beckles, as a world-renowned historian, has done a great deal of work with some Scottish universities, all right? And in his work on slavery, I think he uncovered where some noblemen or people in Scotland had reserved substantial funds which they had earned from the slave trade. And some of these funds were under the heading of appropriations from slavery, right? They were supposed to make some of these funds available to UWI. Did that happen?
Well, I think it's a process. As far as I'm aware, it's the University of Glasgow, if I'm not mistaken,
Yes, yeah.
that had received donations from people who had been slave owners, and they're examining the quantum of how much they had received, and I think they're also examining exactly what mechanism they would use to deal with the consequences of this.
And but that would be a substantial assistance.
It would be a substantial assistance if it were as simple as just receiving a check in the mail. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I suspect it's going to be a little more complicated than that.
Mr. Bermudez, I want to take you generally off UWI and to speak generally about leadership, sir, in the Caribbean. We are in this global arena. It's a very competitive world we are living in terms of business, mm-hmm. And we are in this technological age, and there are many people who suggest that with globalization, it is negatively impacting small developing territories of the world, like countries in the Caribbean. The leadership in our region, from whether we are talking about at the level of the university or level of government, business, are we up to it?
Of course, we're up to it. We're going to have to deal with it, because I don't think we as West Indians are going to run and hide. So I think we're up to it. I think that the world is going to change and is changing, and we are seeing it change. We have some serious issues that are going to affect us. One of them is climate change, which is clearly going to, we are on the front line of that, and as no doubt you've been told already, we are not really responsible for it because we are not large emitters of greenhouse gases, but we are going to be affected by it. I think we're going to have to really and truly come up to the challenge of thinking of ways to harden, if you want to use that word, harden our infrastructure so that we will withstand hurricanes. Otherwise, there's the risk of these islands becoming depopulated, because living through a hurricane and losing all of your house and your possessions, I mean, these are very frightening things, and there's also the loss of life. And that has every possibility of reducing the population of the island. So that is one issue. The thing about technology, though, is that it flattens the world. And if we are up to the challenge, it allows us in these islands to be as competitive as everybody else. And I am confident that the younger generation, the people who are going through UE today, are going to leave with the skills to deal with that problem. Maybe you and I, we may have some difficulty with it, but I think the young people, the country is in safe hands with the young people.
Well, you know,
they will be a match for the problems.
There are people who suggest that the British left many countries of the Caribbean ill prepared for independence. And most of these countries have been struggling for decades now, and finding it very difficult to make their ways in the world. especially the smaller countries in the Caribbean. And yet you say that we can compete.
But I think we're better off today than when we were colonies, don't you?
But it depends on the place or what you mean by better off, because there is a view that in terms of social development, we are struggling. The social development of our people. We talk about crime and violence. We talked about non-communicable diseases. We have some structural problems that we have not addressed as we ought. And the leaders of our region have not addressed them properly.
Do you think we should blame the former colonial power for that, or should we take responsibility for ourselves? I mean, we've been independent for 50 years. Bahamas not quite as long, 40 odd years.
Yes, that is why I ask you whether or not leadership is up to it.
We should take responsibility. That is my view, because the issues that we have are our problems, and I certainly, for one, would not like to return to a situation where we were part of a colonial empire. As we were. I think we are better off as independent people, far better off.
Well, there's a view, Mr. Bermudez, that some of the countries of the region are still in a colonialistic mode.
Well, they may, but they may be, and I don't know which ones in particular you're talking about. However, at least by being independent, they have the opportunity to remove themselves from that state.
Okay.
Mr. Bermudez, I went to Trinidad in the 60s. When I went there, we had an expression in the Bahamas. They used to make sport of us. They make mama guy in Trinidad.
I know what you mean.
Okay, all right. Because we had a touristic economy.
Yeah.
All right. Very negative remarks I used to hear, right? Remarks like, oh, all you people in the Bahamas you're waiting on the white man's table. Never forget it, all right? But when you look at the region now, sir, the region would not be where it is if it were not for tourism. You look in the Eastern Caribbean, right? Trinidad is probably maybe a small exception, Trinidad and Guyana. But on the region as a whole, tourism has been the transformational economic activity in the region. And tourism today, the Caribbean today, is the #1 cruise destination globally, all right? But when you look at the linkages to tourism, it's very weak. It's very weak. And one of those linkages is food. The region has between $4 and $5 billion food import bill, right? But yet, the agriculture school in St. Augustine's now is a shadow of what it used to be.
Well,
all right? A shadow, all right? The only agricultural economies of any consequence in the region are Jamaica and probably Guyana and Belize to a certain extent, all right? But a region which came into its existence because of crop production, meaning sugar and the other commodities of the slave trade. Agriculture in UWI is almost non-existent, sir.
Well, you've asked several questions, they all wrapped into one. But the reality is that the region has moved on to a great extent. Tourism has become a huge business.
It's the leading?
It's the leading business.
Foreign exchange right now.
It's a leading industry in the world, period. And it is the leading industry in the Caribbean.
But let me cut you off here. The Bahamas led the way, sir.
And the Bahamas led the way.
Yes.
Congratulations to you for doing that.
Then those fellas in Trinidad
forget the fellas
were maligning me.
Yeah, they were maligning you, but the reality is that you all made a right decision.
Yeah.
Because look at the GDP of the Bahamas today, look at the level of employment of the Bahamas today. I mean, you have a lot to be proud of. And you used the tool set you had to create prosperity for your people. So the Trinidadians were wrong.
They,
And you knew it when they were telling you that.
You studied the cave of
they were wrong, yes, but I'm back to this leadership thing because we've gone backwards in terms of agriculture.
Yes.
And backwards in some other areas as well. And when you look at the quality of life index, we're not faring well as a region, given what we have in tourism and all the rest of it. And so we go back to leadership, sir, and the University of the West Indies. It seems to me must play a greater role in leadership in our region. Because when the university is playing its role and doing its job well, it is helping to educate our people and helping to lead the people, yes?
Absolutely. If it's a criticism, I accept it, that the university can do more, because the university can always do more. But the university does do a lot, and we do produce the leaders of the Caribbean in every field, whether it be tourism, politics, as we said earlier, we are producing the leaders. I don't know that we are any worse off today than we were 40 years ago. Today I visited the health service here, and some of those wards were built in the time of TB, which is a disease that basically no longer exists. And the hospital is in immaculate condition. They have a modern hospital dealing with hundreds of people there. And I was told that, well, the Bahamian patient wants to have the same treatment as if he'd been in Florida.
Yes.
And certainly parts of that hospital would appear to be in Florida when you're walking through it. So I have to believe that we've made progress, because when I was a young man, nothing like that existed. In fact, we had very rudimentary healthcare in Trinidad. I can't speak to the Bahamas. And we have made significant progress in all of the islands in the Caribbean when it comes to healthcare. And the University of West Indies has led the way in healthcare, in that we've produced the medics and the nurses and all the medical staff that are required for that. And healthcare is one of the major indicators which you would use to measure success.
And but you're not able to retain these physicians that you've educated. They're going to greener pastures.
Well, but the good news is that we're educating more.
You're educating more.
We're educating more. That's our role. But we cannot stop them from going looking at to have their best life experience, whatever they may decide that is.
You're educating people for the world.
Yes, I mean, ultimately we are. We lose a significant amount of our educated young people. It's just the reality.
But isn't it something that with all of the resources that governments of the Caribbean are spending to keep the university going, that you have a significant portion of your graduates who are abandoning the region and going to North America and other countries?
You use the word abandon. It's not the word I would use. I think that they're leaving the region because they see better opportunity elsewhere. They don't abandon us because many of them return in retirement. Many of them support their parents from the opportunities that they do have in these first world countries.
But wouldn't you think that having spent the amount of money on these people that they owe it to their countries to have some emotional attachment here and to remain, to develop these countries in the Caribbean?
Well, I can't speak to that. To be honest, people must do what they think is best for them. We live in a free world, and these are free men and women, and they must follow their best interests.
Mm-hmm. Yes. You know, we have general programs on the quality of governance on an ongoing basis on this station. And I asked you about leadership first. I want to ask you about the quality of governance of our region. And as the Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, I'm sure you have an opinion there.
Well, I have an opinion about the governance of the University of the West Indies. And that I can speak to you about because that I know about. The university really, one of the first things I did after I became Chancellor was to appoint a Chancellor's Commission on Governance, Transparency and Accountability. Now the university...
Those are buzzwords for governments in the Caribbean generally.
Yeah, but there are also three very important issues that have to be dealt with. And the university was born a colonial institution, and a lot of its governance is still quite colonial in nature and requires a major overhaul. It has been tampered with in a small way over the years. Occasionally, certain changes have been made, but at present we have a major undertaking to review the governance structure of the university, to modernize it, to ensure that the university at all times is transparent and that its decisions are properly accounted for. To me, it's terribly important because if you're going to modernize the university, modernize the thinking of the university, and become a really globally competitive institution, then you have to have very modern and flexible governance. So I prefer not to comment, and I can't comment about the particular governance of any country. I'm talking about generally. I'm not familiar, but I could tell you that we are making a large effort at the moment. Sir Dennis Byron, who was the president of the Caribbean Court of Justice, is the chairman of the commission, and I have every confidence that when he is finished, we will have a modern governance structure for the University of the West Indies, and it is critical. If we are to modernize and if we are to move forward and leave our colonial past truly behind us.
Yes.
And maybe the University of West Indies will set the example and lead the way.
And hopefully other governments of the region would use the Caribbean Court of Justice. Because currently there are many who still, the last Court of Appeal is the Privy Council.
Yeah.
Yes?
And that does not speak well.
It doesn't speak well for the Caribbean.
No, it does not.
Particularly since most of your jurists were trained at UWI.
That is true. That is true.
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Bermudez, the Caribbean, politically, very tribalized. You got it in Trinidad between the Africans and the Indians. You got it in Guyana between the Africans and the Indians. All right? As that tribalized ism reared its head at the university?
Well, I mean, you know, one could find tribalism everywhere if you're looking for it. You can identify it if you're looking for it. That's what you're trying to find. I'm particularly of the view that we are very small societies. We're very small countries. Even if when we are together, we are 5 million people. 5 million people are not even a medium size, continues to be a very small country. And if we keep segregating ourselves by whatever measure, whether it be socioeconomic measure, tribe, if you want to call it that, if we keep segregating ourselves, then we have no chance. Because we need to come together regardless of our religion, regardless of our level of education, regardless of whether we are tourist-oriented or energy-oriented. We have to come together because there is strength in unity. And even when we are all together, we're still few of us.
Here again is a significant role for the University of the West Indies in terms of educating our people about these things, yes?
Well, I think we're doing that.
Are you really?
Yes, I think we're educating people. The mere fact that we bring people of different circumstances together to live together for 3 years, although they're not living necessarily in residence, although some of the campuses have residential halls. But the fact that we bring them together and they realize that it's very little difference between them, they have more in common than they have in differences, that in itself helps. Tertiary education does that in itself.
But in terms of reaching the average man on the street and making him feel as a Caribbean person, because there are many countries in the region where people have adopted North American lifestyles, and quite frankly, they look towards North America and not look at themselves and as to what they can do to make the Caribbean a better place.
Well, I mean, you seem to want the University of Western Indies to solve all the problems. To solve all the problems of...
To lead and to teach people.
And in fact, we are here to guide, we are here to advise, we are here to educate the youth, and then we have to leave it to them to do what they think is in their best interest.
Okay, very good. Mr. Bermudez, it's a pleasure speaking with you today.
This has been an unexpected pleasure.
Unexpected pleasure. It's pleasant. It's pleasant for us. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for watching and listening to our program today. And we thank the Chancellor for joining us on this program. Good evening, everyone.